I got my wife to buy 83,000 worth of this Singapore savings bonds. Do note again, buying Singapore savings bonds, you do need a CDP account, you do need iBanking, and there's a $2 transaction fee. So if you haven't seen my previous tutorials on it, check them out in the links above. I want to show you the key reason as to why I'm pumping in some monies, and it's quite obviously the first reason is because I sold my house, there's capital coming in. This cash, I calculated, I do need time to deploy in the market. I still have other cash. So this 83,000 in my situation is idling cash. And because of this, I realized that Singapore savings bond rates are not going much higher. Here's why. Hi guys, welcome back. Let's get on to things. Let me firstly pull up the Singapore savings bond for this month, April 2023 versus the previous month, March 2023. What we can realize is that for the 1 year, the April rate is 3.03%, correct? Slightly higher than the March one. But the 10-year rate for March was higher at 3.15 average return per year. This month's April 2023 Singapore savings bonds average is 3.07 only. Now, I've shared before that Singapore savings bonds are a fantastic emergency cash solution, because if you want it, you can pull it out straight away. If you don't need, you just keep rolling. There's a guaranteed interest with it. But for my case, this is not really emergency cash, so I might want to pull it out when I've deployed my cash to equity markets and I want to inject more if I see opportunities over there. So I want it to be liquid. By parking to Singapore savings bonds, I get 3.03% for the first year and second year, and actually until the 7th year. That's guaranteed, locked in already. The usual question then is, why not T-bills, correct? Because T-bills, the average yield is about 3.85% right now. The simple reason as why I'm picking Singapore savings bonds is quite easy. I don't want to keep worrying about rolling 6 months and 6 months of T-bills. It's quite a lot of hassle. I do understand there's a difference in terms of the interest rates, but I also like to highlight reinvestment risks. We don't know the next block of T-bills. What would the percentage of return be? Could it be 2+% only? For Singapore savings bonds, I locked in and I am free to keep rolling it. And do know also, for T-bills, if you want to sell it, you can only do so with our 3 local banks by visiting their branch. I think it's quite a bit of a hassle. I don't know if this is updated or not. So as always, in some point in the future, I do believe it will become electronic, but I think it's still accurate. Right now, there's still some hassle if I see an investment opportunity and I do want to pull that money back immediately. So here's really where it gets interesting. I think being on the channel, you kind of know Fed has been raising interest rates, correct? We are now at such an inverted yield environment that the short-term rates are much higher than the long-term rates. Let me pull up the US 1-year Treasury versus the US 10-year Treasury. What we can see is if you park 1 year, you get 4.8%. If you park 10 years, you get an average of 3.4% per annum. Now, this phenomenon is the first in a long while, and many have observed that a recession tends to precede such an event. Why so? When interest rates spike, especially when Fed raises overnight rates, short-term rates going up would usually cause businesses to pull back, which usually means economic slowdown and possibly recessions. But the 10-year rate is forecasting when things become normal, which means they do believe that rates will drop in some point in future. As Mark Twain saying goes, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. The yield inversion is definitely temporary, but what we see now is the most prolonged period, whereby it's close to a year of yield inversion already. The first sign of it came as early as July 2022. Understanding this, I realized there could be a problem to Singapore savings bonds. By right, the Singapore savings bond should be priced something like this. Over here in this chart, you realize I mapped out Singapore savings bonds versus SGS, which is Singapore Government Securities. You would realize that the 1-year SGS is about 3.71%. The 2-year SGS is 2.96% and the 10-year is 2.78%. So if we plug in the figures, by right, the Singapore savings bond should be giving 3.71% because, again, it's all issued by Singapore government, correct? And in fact, Singapore savings bond with flexibility should be at a discount, in my opinion at least. Then the 2-year rate should be 2.96%. But instead, what we see is a flat 3.03%, 3.03% for the first 2 years itself. So why is the interest rate given like that? There's no mathematical formula explained in the markets. But I guess it's because Singapore savings bonds is not a normal bond that floats on the market like SGS bond. Normal bond prices drop when interest rates go up. That's why you see this 1st June 2025 government bond with about 2 years plus left. Because the coupon for this bond is 2.375%, right now it's actually dropped in terms of its price. It's now trading below par, which is 100. These are bond terminologies. If you are not sure, leave them in the comment sections. I'll try to clarify them for you. But the key message again is principal is not guaranteed when you buy a bond. along the way, even for a government bond. The principal is only guaranteed at maturity. This reiterates again, Singapore savings bond is not a normal bond. It's engineered by government. There is a flexibility of withdrawals with no penalty, which also means principal guaranteed, not at point of maturity, but at all times. Let's pull up the Singapore savings bond versus SGS bond again. You would realize that the current price the first year at 3.7% and the average return for second year at 2.96%, like what I've pointed over here. Because this would mean that the second year coupon is only 2.21% to achieve the average of 2.96%. And when I realized this, I kind of concluded that the Singapore savings bond was not planned for a period of yield inversion in mind. It was only planned for normal yield curves, whereby if you lend for a short period, you should get less than someone who commits for 10 years, correct? There's bigger risk. That is a normal yield curve. Lend 1 year, you get this. Lend 2 years, you get this. Lend 10 years, you get this. This makes common sense. But now, again, we have a yield inversion, and I've checked across previous issues of Singapore savings bond. I realized that there was never a point whereby the first year was more than the second year, and I believe they can't design it that way. Let me know again if I'm correct or not, and as always, if you have learned something, heard something different, smash the like button. So let's examine this April 2023 bond issue again. This is as flat as it can get already. It's literally 3.07% fixed for year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, and even year 6 and 7. The only jump comes in at year 8, 9, and 10. This is the reason why the average 10-year rate is pulled up slightly to 3.07%, as you can see over there. So we have to ask this question: if the interest rate on yearly basis can only step up each year or be the same, cannot decrease, does that mean that unless the long-term rate increase, the near-term rate would not increase? Really, think about it for a second. What I'll show you next is what's happening to the 10-year rate. What's going on in US 10-year Treasury looks like this, and it clearly seems to have peaked. Since the start of the year, it has declined gradually and now is at 3.415% only, where previously it was above 4%. If we zoom in and compare against a Singapore government bond, we can use this as an example, one that matures in 1st of August 2032, which has about 9.5 years left to maturity. We will realize that indeed the 10-year yield rate has been dropping. So again, if the long-term rates can't increase, the near-term rates can't increase. Does this mean that this issue's first-year rate at 3.03% could be very good? If the 10-year rate continues to drop, it doesn't really matter whether Fed increases interest rate or not. This first year 3.03% is not likely going to go much higher at all. I put my money to where my mouth is. That's why I'm pumping in 83,000. The closing date again for everybody note is 25th of April. If you agree with my analysis and you do have spare cash, consider my suggestion. The 1 year 3.03% with the option to keep rolling for 10 years is indeed attractive at current market situation. And by sharing with you this analysis, I'm effectively competing with you in the same tranche because there's a finite amount. This month's issue is 700 million. The previous tranche of 700 million was oversubscribed and the quantity ceiling was 68,500. So again, if you appreciate the generous sharing, smash the subscribe button. Even if I get it wrong, interest rates start to climb aggressively again, do know again, your principal in the Singapore savings bonds is guaranteed. You won't be worse off by any situation. Let's take investors who have bought the September 2021 issue. You realize 1 year rate, they get 0.35% on year. That's peanuts. 10 years, 1.39% only. So for investors who have bought this bond, no losses, don't worry. Just simply do the Singapore savings bond hack whereby you sell away the old bond and just simply buy the new bond with a better interest rate. It's very, very powerful. Your downside risk is protected and you are free to upgrade to something better with no penalty at all. If this is not free lunch, I don't know what is in the finance space. That's why I guess there's this 200,000 max limit that anyone can subscribe to Singapore savings bond with. This is put in place. If not, for example, if I have a hedge fund, I can just invest 200 million, lock in the rates. And when interest cost drops below 3.03%, I'll just simply fold my interest cost. I make free spread in terms of money. And if interest rate rise, I'll just simply dump it, re-upgrade to something better at almost no cost. This concept ties into a previous story I shared recently on Silicon Valley Bank SVB. SVB got into trouble because they bought US 10-year Treasury bonds, correct? And as we have learned, interest rates go up, bond prices drop. Not only SVB Bank, many banks have losses that are unrealized on their 10-year bond securities. That's why many of them could be insolvent. Again, Singapore savings bonds, if interest rates go up, you just trade it away. No unrealized losses. You get back your principal anytime and you can freely upgrade. on the problems of SBB Bank, I've highlighted in this previous tutorial on possible banking crisis. If you haven't seen it, let me invite you there. I think it'll help you explain a bit better on what could happen in the subsequent quarters ahead in US. And if you've seen that tutorial already, check out this SSB bond ladder which relates to today's topic of Singapore savings bonds. As always, if you like topics like this, make sure to subscribe and head on over there to follow on with your learning. With that, I'm here and see you there. Take care as always. Goodbye.